All right, guys, so we are back with Santino's World Podcast, and we've got a lot to talk about. There's been a lot of fights going on. It's been pretty much the only thing in the world that's going on right now is fights. Really, over the course of a week, we had, who was on that card? So Henry Cejudo fought Dominic Cruz.
Yep.
Who was the main event on that?
Justin Gaethje fought Ferguson.
Justin Gaethje, that's right.
What
Justin
a fight
Gaethje
that
fought
was.
Ferguson.
Really, what a performance that was. And man, honestly, I'm so impressed with both guys for completely different reasons. One, with the performance that Gaethje put on, and the lack of damage that he took. I mean, look at what Ferguson's been doing to all of his other opponents, and then look at Gaethje after that fight. He looked fine.
But that was a one-sided beatdown.
And then I'm impressed with Ferguson on the complete opposite end because of just the heart that he showed and his toughness. I mean, how many of those just bombs did he eat while continuing to move forward?
I got to say, I mean, Ferguson's tough. We knew that. But I got to say there was a bad game plan. I don't know what the game plan was going into that fight. I mean, they said they were training for Khabib, which, of course, a very different fighter. But I don't know what that was about. I mean, it was just like he thought he was just going to go out there and outbox Gaethje.
Or out cardio him. Maybe he thought that Gaethje would kind of punch himself out, like eat the early shots.
Homer Simpson it.
Right. And then as the fight would go on, and this is actually what I kind of thought too. I thought early on Gaethje, but then as the fight continues, I started leaning more towards Ferguson.
Yep.
My opinion changed a little bit the closer I got to the fight, the more confident I thought Gaethje was going to win.
Yeah.
But maybe in Ferguson's mind, he thought Gaethje's taking this fight on short notice, even with the pushback that only gave him a few more weeks to properly prepare, and he's going to out cardio him.
There must have been that because he didn't really try and shoot, didn't try and pull guard, didn't try and kick.
I don't think it was until round 5 he did that somersault, whatever, try to switch it up, I guess.
Wasn't really trying to clinch, wasn't trying to get the elbows and knees, which he's kind of known for. It was just it seemed like he went into a boxing fight against a much better boxer.
I think there are a few things at play here. One, you heard that he cut weight twice.
Yeah, that's insane.
I mean, a weight cut is so taxing on the body, and to do that 2 times within 3 weeks of each other, and not to mention, I heard that he put pretty much all of his weight back on.
So he had to do 2 full-on weight cuts again.
So 2 full weight cuts.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
insane.
horrible. And then the other thing too is I heard that he had been in fight camp, or I think he actually said this, that he had been in fight camp since like November, or something like that.
Which that's just bad form on all around. As a fighter, you need to know. As coaches, you need to know. You should not be in camp for months and months and months leading up to this stuff. You can't do it. Your body can't do it. But more so mentally, you can't stay mentally ready to go for that long.
Yeah, for that long.
You just can't do it.
Yeah, and that's why, considering that his body's been being pushed at that kind of intensity since November, and 2 weight cuts back to back within 3 weeks, I cannot believe his chin held up.
But this is why people shouldn't take those last minute replacement type of fights. Every time you see somebody in line for the title, the champion, gets hurt and can't take it, so they end up taking another fight instead. They lose. They always lose their title shot. I mean, it always freaking happens.
Right.
The other thing is, you see things like that happen, then you see people who are taking fights too often. They get on a streak, they win a fight, take another fight, short notice, and they end up losing it.
Donald Cerrone. That's the guy we always talk about, that he gets these streaks, and he'll win 2, 3, 4 fights in a row, and it's like, man, the dude's in title contention, and then we'll just take another fight instead of taking his time and waiting for the title. Right.
And he always loses those afterwards.
Yeah, I think it was the last podcast we were thinking, for as long as he's been around, for as successful as he's been, I think he's only had 1 title shot in the UFC. That was against RDA. We had to look that up because I couldn't think of it off the top of my head. And that's somebody who fights more than anybody else.
I know, it's
but
insane.
He just takes the wrong fights at the wrong time sometimes.
And then you've got, so that fight was a good fight. And we have Henry Cejudo and Dominic Cruz, which, I mean, Henry just dominated that fight. It looked like in the second round, Dominic started to find a little bit of a rhythm with some timing, and then he just got leveled right there. People were that was a controversial stoppage in the sense where some people thought it was a little early. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, when they stopped it, it could have been a little bit early just because of, like, Dominic was moving and going. But if you take the whole scenario where he got leveled 10 seconds earlier by a knee that sent him into another dimension and then got swarmed and punched, I mean, collectively, and as a referee, you can't tell. Like, man, you just see something like that, and you see somebody getting hit. I mean, these are fractions of seconds that we got to jump in there and do it. And, so Keith Peterson stopped the fight, and Dominic kind of threw quite a tantrum over that and was kind of publicly said that he smelled like alcohol and cigarettes.
Yeah. He came after him. I think he felt like he got robbed because the fight was, in his eyes, unjustly stopped.
Yeah, but I mean, referees have a hard job too. And
absolutely.
Now, what's way more important than Henry and Dominic and Keith Peterson, have you seen Keith Peterson's Twitter?
I've seen screenshots. So I follow different, Instagram pages like MMA Junkie. And, sometimes though, I don't know if people are screenshotting fake tweets. But I had seen a couple fake tweets, or I mean, not fake, but I had seen a couple tweets from Keith Peterson that people had screenshotted and posted. And if those are the real tweets from Keith Peterson, they've been awesome.
So there's a Twitter account, and it's official Keith Peterson, checkmark, all that good stuff.
Okay, verified.
Yeah, verified. And it's like, you're a pussy. And it showed a picture of Dominic Cruz on his way down. He's like, this is what I look like after a night of alcohol and cigarettes. And it showed Dominic getting dropped with his mouthpiece hanging out. Yeah. And then Dominic Cruz was responding, and he's like, you're a pussy. Peterson is running this dude. It's it's almost awkward at point where at first it's funny, and then you're like, all right, this is too much. This dude is going too hard.
And that's why I didn't know if it was just being reshared because somebody had, photoshopped the response and it was funny, or if those were really his responses.
I'm not done. So that was on Saturday that the Dominic Cruz thing and everything happened. It was... Then I was in Jacksonville for the Wednesday fight and then the Saturday fight card. And I think we saw him, either Saturday morning or Friday afternoon, whatever it was for the Saturday fight card. And I asked him, I said, dude, because we were talking about the stoppage, we were talking about stuff, just chatting. And I said, the stoppage, whatever. And I was like, dude, but I got to ask, is that your real Twitter account? And he's like, no, it's not. It was okay. It took my soul. He was like, dude, my wife has to show me how to get on social media. He's like, I'm not on social media at all. My wife has to show me how to check into my flight.
Man.
Dude, I'm so technologically, at a disadvantage. Yeah. And it wasn't him at all. It was all fake. But it's awesome. It is the best.
Those
it is the best
responses
Twitter
are awesome. I think I saw one too, where he was responding to a crew. Him, quote unquote, him. He was responding to a tweet, and it was something like, "See, that's how I know because of your." It was something like, because of your recent tweets, that's how I know that my stoppage was justified. Because obviously you took too many shots to the head.
He's like UFC TE.
Yeah.
It was great.
So, those are awesome. Okay, so awesome. I guess that goes.
Yeah,
so they were
that
fake.
was it. But that whole card was a monster of a card.
Actually, the last few cards have been great.
Were phenomenal. Now, so we've got a lot to cover. That whole fight card was actually the undercard, the early prelims. I was like, these aren't so great, blah, blah, blah.
Really? And then, I thought they were good, man. Some of the,
but I was kind of half watching them, so it wasn't like
there were some. There were some slower fights on that card. I'm talking about the Cejudo, Gaethje, the first card back. That was the first.
Like the very first prelim.
That was the first source of entertainment, you know what I mean, that we've had. And those first couple fights.
The actual prelims and then the main card were some of the best fights I've ever seen.
It was one banger after the next. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, just awesome fights. Now, I couldn't think of a better first card back to reintroduce sports after all the weirdness.
No. Now, the second card of the week was Glover and Anthony Smith. And there was Barbosa was on that as well. He fought Dan Ige, and Ige, and then there was a couple other fights as well. Yang Sedong fought
Chito
Vera, and both of those fights were controversial. And then
Angela Hill.
Oh, and then Angela Hill one as well. Yeah,
there was some.
So all three of those were pretty controversial in terms of judging. I want to talk about Anthony Smith, Glover Teixeira. Mm-hmm. Should their corner have stopped that fight?
Okay.
Now, before I even say that, we all speculate and we say this and we say that and everything. They have a thing, and Anthony Smith has told their corner before, if you ever stop a fight, you walk back to the locker room without me. We are no longer training together. Don't ever do it. I get it. But you let me go out there. Don't ever stop a fight. I don't care the details. So that was so knowing that, what do you say about that fight?
So before we even get into that, I think that people are so quick, and I had this whole conversation with my uncle too. We were talking about this, but people are so quick to jump on the bandwagon of opinions. I think Daniel Cormier, he was the first person that I heard anyways. I don't know if someone else said it first, but he was the first person that I heard say that the corner should have stopped the fight, and it was kind of some poor cornering going on from Smith's side, from Smith's team. Mm-hmm. after that, man, I started seeing everybody just thrashing Anthony Smith's corner because DC started it, and then everyone was like, yeah, no, it's the corner. Oh, it's the corner.
I believe in DC. You know, I agree with him.
Yeah, I agree with DC. He's right. And then the next thing you know, Anthony Smith's corner is public enemy number one in the MMA world. And for me, that's frustrating because those same people who are complaining about the cornering from Anthony Smith's team should also be talking about Tony Ferguson's team.
Yeah.
Because they could have thrown in the corner too. Now, granted, Tony Ferguson didn't lose his teeth, but he broke his orbital bone and took a beating for 4.5 rounds.
Well, how gangster does that show Anthony Smith is?
Absolutely.
Hands his teeth to the referee mid-fight.
Right. Gives him, yeah, exactly.
No. But I think, the other thing too is, did you hear them talking? Is that Glover Teixeira mid-fight is beating him up going, sorry, this is just business. And Anthony Smith is like,
it is what it is.
I get it. Yeah.
That's what he said. He goes, it is what it is.
Didn't care at all. Now, I think as a whole, I think everybody wants to blame the corner. But I think there's a systemic failure on all of our parts in the sport. The corner could have stopped it. The referee could have stopped it. The commission could have stopped it.
Right.
A lot of things could have happened. The fighter could have stopped it at any point. But the same thing. The same people complaining about the Anthony Smith stoppage going too long are the ones claiming that Dominic Cruz fight got stopped too early.
Right.
And there's a 1 second difference between Dominic Cruz's fight being too early and then letting him get dementia and a bleed on his brain and dying. And so, like, there's that fine line, but anybody could have stopped that fight. A lot of people could have stopped that fight.
Right.
But we want to complain. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, Yeah,
I do think that there's a little bit of a difference because if Cruz was getting just destroyed, like the Ferguson was a very one-sided fight. Now, I did have Henry winning that whole fight too, but it looked like Dominic was starting to slowly find his rhythm in round 2, and Dominic will be the first one to tell you. He told us all 7 times in the cage after his fight that he was on his way up. When a fighter is on his way up, you shouldn't stop the fight. I agree with him. I'm not the biggest Dominic Cruz fan, but I agree with Dominic Cruz where he did eat a good shot. He ate that knee. He took a couple more shots on the ground, but was never he was down, but he was not out. He was on his way back up, and the ref jumped in.
I agree with you 100%, but what I'm saying is that if he was working his way up and they had let it go another second and Henry had hit him with an uppercut or a knee that just sent him down dead, then why didn't you stop the fight? Why didn't you do this? He didn't need that shot. You could have stopped it earlier. That's what I'm saying, is there would have been the same people complaining that the Anthony Smith fight, that could have been stopped or not.
Right.
The Ferguson fight, hey, should they have stopped it? Should they have let him go out on the shield?
Thank you, Herb Dean, for stopping that fight.
Yes,
oh my
exactly,
gosh.
exactly.
I was rooting for Gaethje. I put money on Gaethje. It was picking him was kind of the unpopular opinion, so you want him to win even more because he's the underdog. And it went from like, yes, let's go, getting hyped up, like seeing his success to, this is hard to watch.
Yes, very hard to watch.
Oh my gosh, please. When Ferguson took a step back and shook his head right before Herb Dean stopped, I was like,
brutal.
That was horrible. Like, you feel that. You're like, dude, please
just go down.
After he shook his head like that, I don't want to see him take another shot. Yeah. And when Herb stepped in, I was so happy about that.
But Jason Herzog, is the one, he reffed the Anthony Smith fight. And he's like, that was my fault. That wasn't the corner's fault. That was my fault. He's like, I should have stopped that fight earlier. And Anthony Smith, too, is like, why is everybody talking about this? Like, dude, like, I'm over it. I'm here with my son and my wife, and I'm hanging out. You guys are all worried about this. I'm not. Like, that's not even in my sight.
Yeah.
But I do think if anyone is to blame, it's the referee, because that's their job to keep the fighter safe.
Right.
And if anyone, because as a coach, your fighter, and there's a lot of back, behind the scenes things. Anthony Smith is like, don't ever stop a fight. So you kind of feel like your hands are tied, or you might, and your judgment is skewed. As coaches, we go, oh, I know so-and-so, there's still a chance. We hold out for hope, and that is what you don't want in this situation, is you want an unbiased person who does not know how these people train, that does not have a tie to either of them, going objectively, all right, I'm going to stop this fight or not even stop the fight or not, being in there with them so he has the option of stopping the fight or not, because you don't want somebody that that knows you in charge of that. You know what I mean?
Because there could, exactly. There could be a conflict of interest there.
Yeah.
So I think that Anthony Smith's corner took a little bit of an unfair beating. I understand people, when they say, oh, he could have stopped the fight. But nobody knew about the deal that Anthony Smith basically, presented to them. Hey, never stop the fight. You don't know those things.
And we're not perfect, man. Coaches, we were talking about cornering just a little while ago. Cornering is stressful, and we're under pressure. Not that makes it right or wrong, but we're not perfect either. Just like the referee, was a Dominic Cruz stoppage early or late? I don't know. I mean, you know what I mean? But just same thing with you make a call and you can't take it back. Referees, umpires in the NFL. You're like, I fucked up.
Yeah.
People fuck up. We mess up. We're not perfect. We're fallible.
And sometimes in the moment we do what we think is best at that time.
Yeah.
Maybe at the time the ref saw Anthony Smith fighting back and was like, hey, I'm gonna give this dude a fighting chance. He hasn't died. He hasn't quit.
Yep.
He hasn't broke.
Yeah.
And then maybe with Dominic Cruz in that situation, he looks at him and maybe he sees Cruz's eyes rolling to the back of his head, and we don't see that.
But I think the commission too, and I got to see the rules on this. I think it would be nice that if there was a secondary option of stopping the fight. So, a commissioner, somebody who's in charge of the commission, because you get one referee, and this is all on you, whether it's good or bad, it's all on one person to stop that fight or not.
Yeah.
You know that coaches can't stop fights. So coaches, even if a coach throws in the towel, that doesn't mean anything. Coach has to wave to the referee or to the commissioner to get their attention, and the commissioner stops the fight. So a coach could conceivably be waving the hands, throwing in the towel, and the commissioner or the referee doesn't accept it, and so that's not, you can just stop a fight. So the commissioner or the commission, there should be somebody secondary to the referee who's like, hey, we got to consider stopping this fight right here.
Right.
If the referee's not going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. And then overall, just from the MMA fans, there should be a standard.
Yes.
Be mad at Anthony Smith's corner, but then also be mad at Ferguson's corner.
Yeah,
or
but
don't
fans
be mad
are
at either.
horrible. Fans in every sport and everything. Everyone's an armchair quarterback.
Right.
Everyone is a bumper sticker politician. The only thing that they know is what they read or on Facebook, and everybody's a critic. You know what I mean? And that's just everyone in every situation, whether it's politics, whether it's sports, whether it's anything. Honestly, social media has given people a voice who shouldn't have a voice. Like, not everybody should have a voice, and not everybody's smart enough to have a platform. And you get these people preaching from a soapbox, preaching from an Instagram account, Twitter handles, living in their mom's garage, and
keyboard warriors.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just how it is. And man, that any politician, any sports, any athlete, anybody who is in the public view of anything receives undue scrutiny.
Yeah.
Undue praise, because when you're winning, everybody wants to be your friend.
Everybody loves you.
The second something's wrong, you're worthless.
Everyone's
Everybody hates you.
yeah.
And a lot of that is just as humans, we're just bad. There's just a lot of bad. We're bad at being humans. There's a lot of that. But man, we had a hell of a week. And let me tell you, that shit was weird, being in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So Jacksonville was weird. We had to do the COVID test.
I was going to ask you about that. Did they have to shove those things up your... how deep in there did they get? Because I've seen some videos, man. It looks rough.
It's probably, I would say, 6 inches into your nose.
Jeez.
Which is average, they say. So but it looks like it goes up your nose. It actually doesn't. It actually kind of goes out and almost down. Like, when we see it go up, we think, oh, it's going up in your brain.
Yeah.
But really, imagine like your nostril. And now imagine that it's going back to your eardrum. That's kind of the trajectory that it goes, but it's weird because...
And just uncomfortable?
It's very uncomfortable. What they do is kind of on a wire, and it's a swab, and they shove it back until it doesn't go anymore. But then they scrape it around the back of your sinus cavity for about 5 to 10 seconds, just again and again and again.
Oh, jeez.
And then... and then you're done. It doesn't hurt. It's really uncomfortable. You don't want it done, but it's fine. It's not the end of the world. But so we did that. We had the antibody test, which is a blood test. Then every day you had to go down and get your temperature taken, and you would get a new color wristband to make sure that your temperature was in a normal range.
For that day. Okay.
For that day. And then you couldn't do anything. You couldn't be anywhere in the hotel until you had your temperature taken.
Okay.
So there's that. So that was all weird.
Man. Sorry to interrupt, but I was worried when Jacare tested positive, because I thought,
yes.
Here we go.
And we're done.
We're done. Yeah. Yep. Dana's fought so hard to bring the UFC back. We're back. Very first event. Fighter and his cornerman test positive.
Fighter and 2 cornermen. What they didn't all say, I mean, some of the media might have said it a little bit, is that he was out there hanging out with fighters and people talking. There's video and there's pictures of him around people.
Taking selfies.
And so you're going, man, in COVID, it can take a few days to a week to register for you to start feeling symptoms. Who knows how many other people got COVID from Jacare and his people?
That's what I was thinking, because I heard it could take up to 2 weeks before you start showing symptoms.
Yep.
And how many people did they infect in that time? We won't. Who maybe are starting to show symptoms now?
Yes.
From that. But anyways, I'm happy that they were able to keep the events going, because I thought as soon as word gets out, they're going to shut it down.
That's what I thought. It was like a day or two before it was weigh-ins. So it was Friday. So I was supposed to leave on Sunday for Jacksonville, and when I heard that, I was like, oh, this is getting shut down.
Yeah.
I thought, all right, the first Saturday card, 249, might go through, and then we're getting shut down. But they didn't. They kept it going, kept cruising on. I don't know if that was smart, but
I am surprised though.
But I'm not saying it's not smart. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm like right. I don't know what it was.
But I honestly thought, I'm like, dude, they're gonna throw this back in their faces and say, see, this is why we shouldn't be reintroducing sports. Blah blah blah. So I'm surprised that there are events that they're still going strong.
Went off without a hitch. Yeah. So getting there, the fights were a little bit weird. You didn't stay backstage. Normally you go to a green room afterwards. Normally you go a couple hours early. You wait. You went right before your fight, warmed up, fought, and then they took you right out of the hotel, right out of the arena, right back to the hotel.
Do you like that better?
100%.
Get in, 100%. Get the job done, get out.
And then go. The other thing I like better is no crowd. I actually really liked...
I'm glad you brought that up.
Hearing... I liked it. I thought most people competed better. I think the nerves weren't as prevalent. And... even, of course, I was there for 2 of the fights, but the first one I watched on TV, hearing the sounds on television is so much better than hearing the crowd. And that's brutal. I'm over here saying, hey, we should be better, stop fights, this and this and that. Hearing every single punch crack the way that it did in a primal, horrible, horrible way.
With bad intention.
It was pleasing to hear that.
It totally. Hearing these guys land leather on each other with the worst of intentions, really and the kicks and the blocks and the cornermen, it made the sport so much more intimate, right?
Yes.
It made it so much more real, so much more personal. It was less entertainment and, like you said, more primal, because you watch and you're getting all the senses involved, because you can hear everything, and it was. I loved it. I do miss crowds a little bit. There are different things. I miss crowds because, like, there were a couple times where someone would pick somebody up and slam them.
Yes.
And it's just silent.
So the thing that got me is, so one of our other team coaches, Eddie Cha, he was cornering Henry Cejudo for this fight. And that was his first world title fight to corner and coach. And there is something, the prelims, whatever. I mean, you get in there's not a huge crowd, but it's still fun. There is something amazing walking out as a pay-per-view main event for a world championship belt.
Yeah.
You walk out there and you don't see anything at first. You see some people a little bit, and then you turn the corner where you go, and then it's just stadiums filled to the brim with people screaming, yelling. That is excitement and adrenaline, and that is awesome.
Yeah.
So I felt bad that he didn't get to experience that really visceral, like, crowd, that excitement. You know what I mean?
That's a bummer.
Now, besides like a main event title fight type of thing where you want that energy, I loved it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's the good with the bad.
Totally. So like someone gets rocked and the crowd goes crazy. That's exciting as a fan too. Like you enjoy hearing that. Yeah. But man, I loved the just the whole feel of it.
Yep.
I almost loved not hearing it as much as I love hearing the crowd, because those moments became so much more impactful.
Yep. It was fun. These next few sets of fights, I believe, are going to be at the Apex in Vegas.
Okay. So it'll be a Contender Series vibe.
Well, no, I think it'll be pretty much the exact same vibe that we've been having. Even though they're at the Apex, they're still not going to allow spectators. They're still not bringing in friends or family or anything like that. It'll just be the same situation, basically on a sound stage like they had it.
It's kind of similar to Contender Series because there aren't really a whole lot of people in Contender. It's pretty quiet and dead.
It is pretty quiet. But yeah, so that's kind of what's been going on in the news just over the last week of fights, which is really interesting. And we're starting to see the UFC is going to keep going. I think we've got a May 30th, a June 6th, a June 13th, and a June 20th card already set up. So that's pretty much every week they're going. I think the only reason why they had a break now, because they were supposed to do the 23rd, but they delayed it a week because they're moving back to Vegas for the Apex. But pretty much they're pumping fights out as they go.
Yeah. And there's a chance there too, when they were trying to figure out everything with Vegas, that they might have come here to Arizona. That would have been awesome.
And I would have liked that. I would have liked that. Mainly the reason why I would have liked that is not even the travel or anything, but Arizona's open, so we have access to things now, whereas Vegas is still closed.
Right.
So it's just not as convenient to do stuff. But I don't know how open Vegas is, and we were talking with some people that didn't, with the UFC, that were like, we don't know what's going on because they don't know if the commission is going to allow fights or not, or if they're doing it, how it's going to work, where we're at with the hotel. Okay. We're at kind of a small, what was it, Holiday Inn Express, Hampton Inn?
Yeah.
When we went for the Contender Series.
It's one of those, something like that.
I believe we're going to be staying at the same hotel, not like a big Vegas casino, so we don't have access to the workout rooms. They want us to social distance during that time and not hang out with anybody else. But at least in Jacksonville, there was a restaurant in the hotel, 2 restaurants, so we had access to things. In Vegas, I don't know just logistically how we're going to work out, how we're going to get food, how we're going to eat.
Where you're going to cut the weight.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know, and because I don't believe the PI is going to be open. And everything is day by day, so maybe the PI opens up and everything's fine. But I'm curious
how this all unfolds.
Yes, it's day by day, work in progress, moving parts, and none of us really know. But we're all just kind of moving with it and going with it.
Yeah, just cruising, going with the flow.
Fun. Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's kind of reminds me of when I first started fighting.
Yeah,
there wasn't huge crowds and huge arenas and all of this stuff. It was kind of like backstage. You know what I mean? Just kind of doing stuff as it goes.
But you guys made it work. You found a way to make it work.
Figured out how to do it. Showed up, fought. Who knows who you're fighting? You're just showing up, going. People are. I mean, they're putting.
It's crazy
these fights,
how far the sports come, huh?
Yeah, they're putting these fights together last minute. You know, some of these fights are like a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah, that dude, I forget what his name is, the bantamweight who moved up to fight that at featherweight, took the fight on like 2 days' notice. He basically found out about the fight on Thursday, weighed in on Friday, fought on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, they're just
insane.
They're just pulling people in because a lot of it is they don't know who can actually train because a lot of the country is still shut down. So
exactly.
Gyms aren't open. We have a girl from LA who has been coming over here because our gyms are open, and her gyms are closed out in LA.
Right.
So it's kind of a strange thing. But also in the news, so we're talking about the last fights and stuff. The big, which is funny to even say that this is news, because this isn't news, this is social media. But you're seeing
it's almost the same. It's almost the same thing nowadays. But
it's funny to see social media reported as news now, and not even just in MMA. You'll see, you go to CNN or Huffington Post or Fox News, any of the big news websites, and there will be a tweet and an entire article, a news article surrounding a tweet that somebody sent, and you're like, how the hell is this
the world
news?
We're living in?
Yeah, it's not it. But one of the biggest names in MMA, I'd say the biggest name in MMA history, right?
Conor McGregor?
Yeah.
Oh,
is bigger than Jon Jones, big name-wise?
Hands down.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought so, but
the numbers back that.
Yeah, the numbers back it. Biggest name in MMA history. First of all, dude goes on Twitter rants all the time.
Yeah.
And which I'm not on Twitter, but I see it on every other social media site because it's reported as news. But he went on and did his greatest fighters of all time, pound for pound greatest fighters of all time. Can you do us the honors and kind of explain like who he thought, like how everybody ranked in that scenario?
Yes. All right. So I have his tweets here. So this is what he says. First tweet, he titles it GOAT Thread. The array of finishes across 2 divisions with champion status in 1, Anderson Silva is the #1 MMA GOAT. Okay. All right. So he ranks Anderson Silva as #1. My array of finishes across 3 divisions with champion status in 2, I'm #2, if not tied for #1.
Wait, I got to go back really quickly to Anderson. Did it say Anderson was in 1 division or 2 divisions?
It said that he fought in 2 divisions and had the champion status of 1.
Okay, keep going.
Or in 1. However, still active, #1 is fully secured by career's end easily. Okay. Or by career end easily. So he's saying he ranks himself as #2 currently, if not tied for #1.
Done, he'll be #1.
Yup, because he's still active. All right, and then he continues. GSP is in at #3. Much less array of finishes, but champion status in 2. He's far behind though. Reasons equaling. Left 170 after much damage taken plus questionable decision. Never re-engaged the welterweight successors. Bottled Anderson Silva fight and only moved when one-eyed fighter presented. He played it safe. So basically saying he only moved up when he could fight Michael Bisping, which is the easy matchup at that weight class. Because he wasn't trying to fight. Who is it? Rockhold, right? He wasn't trying to move up and fight Rockhold before Bisping took the belt. All right. Jon Jones is number 4, maybe tied for 3. More array of finishes than 3 and still active, but champion status in just 1. Reasons equal multiple lackluster decision performances plus questionable decision win. I'm assuming he's talking about
Dominic Reyes.
No, oh my gosh, Gustafsson. Alexander Gustafsson.
So I was thinking Dominic Reyes. That was a pretty close one.
That was
a lot
a close
of people
one,
thought Reyes won that.
A lot of people did, but I and you could be right. I don't know.
Honestly, maybe it's Gustafsson and Reyes because both of those were pretty controversial at the time.
Yes.
Yes. Rewatching them and going back, we might all have different opinions. But at the time,
a lot of people thought Gustafsson won that fight.
Gus won. A lot of people thought Reyes won. A lot of people thought Jones won both those. But they were polarized at the time.
All right. Attempting to safe play heavyweight entry, avoiding its champion. So he's still talking about Jon Jones right there. The last one, I didn't mention PED results on multiple entrants, even though that makes me the clear current number 1 MMA GOAT, along with still being active. Although it shames, as well as puts all runs and finishes in complete doubt, I've snored multiple juice heads. A true GOAT must do it all.
Okay.
Now, do we stop there, or should we go to some of the responses to that?
No, we'll stop there so we can address them. Well, first of all, the first response... Actually, no, we got to talk about some of the responses because... And we'll just do this quickly. Of course, Khabib responded.
So Jon Jones, I think, at least the order of how they have it listed, I think he was the first to respond, and he goes, and still. Try that one first, lad. Which, to me... That's
a big deal.
That's the best response, and still.
Yep. Now, the other one that I liked was Nate Diaz was like, hey, I'm the baddest motherfucker there is, this and that. In which George Masvidal responded,
he's like
hey, I'm 1 for 1, basically, in the baddest motherfucker belt.
Yeah, so Diaz goes, I smoked the number 1 pound for pound and double champ. Know the real GOAT when you see him. And don't forget that I did it better and quicker than anyone else on the ground and sent him down with punches quicker than Mayweather did. So fuck y'all, so fuck all y'all rankings and know a real GOAT when you see me. And then which is another it's a perfect response from him.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I never thought about it that he did put Mayweather down quicker. I mean, he did put Conor down quicker than Mayweather did with punches. Part of that is I don't know if Mayweather was kind of playing with Conor a little bit to give the fans a show, because I feel like at any point in time Mayweather could have just put it on Conor and then finally decide, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. But it still happened. He did put him down with punches, and that was when the whole famous line, like, oh, you're a wrestler now.
Yeah.
That's when that started, because Conor ended up shooting in after getting pieced up. And then Masvidal chimes in, let's run it back. Hashtag the resurrection. Hashtag and still.
So,
and Khabib.
Yes.
And so this is the last one. So Khabib, you tapped out in featherweight, you tapped out in lightweight, and you tapped in welterweight. You never defended title in the UFC or Cage Warriors. You gave up more than GSP, Spider, and Bones all together. You're the greatest UFC fighter in Twitter history, which I thought was hilarious.
Which I think is the best. And I think it's the most accurate.
Honestly, all 3 of their responses, Jon Jones going, and still the champ. Where you at? I'm still the champ. Yep. Nate talking about what he did to Conor. Yeah. And then Khabib, dude, it was just...
See, I think Nate just likes to talk because Nate's Nate, but I think the other ones have a valid point. All right, so Conor he's polarizing, and he did a lot. He was a 2-division champ in the UFC, and he beat 2 of some of the greatest fighters of all times, Aldo and Eddie Alvarez, to do so. I mean, those are impressive wins.
100%.
Now, that said, I don't think he's in the top 10 of greatest all time. I mean, maybe top 10, somewhere in the rank of 5 to 10. I think a lot of other people deserve that much more than him. Who do you have as your number 1 all time?
Oh, man. That's a good question, man. I kind of go back and forth between Anderson and Jon Jones. But I think I got to settle on Jon Jones because he's still active. He's still the champ. He's been so dominant for so long. He goes out there. Sure, he's had some lackluster performances. You know what I mean? But he just, the way he puts these guys away, and we rarely. When do we ever see Jones in trouble? We've seen him in trouble twice against Dominic Reyes and against Gustafsson. Other than that, dude, he goes out there and just completely outclasses guys. And remember, he's fighting the best guys in the world. The best fighters that the UFC can find, they're putting against Jon Jones, and he goes out there most of the time and just outclasses them.
2 of his wins are against double champ Daniel Cormier.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that's a big deal. I think Jon Jones at the top, definitely one of the top. The other one I don't think he gets enough credit because he was kind of boring, was GSP. I think GSP really is that good. And he was as dominant as Jon Jones was in terms of defending his championship belt. So you kind of have, I mean, Jones did a little bit more dominant in each fight, but they've both defended similar numbers of titles, right?
Yeah, when I think of like the GOAT, yes, because GSP is up there, you can't deny it.
Yeah, but GSP came off a 3-year layoff and beat the current middleweight champ in Bisping and submitted him. Right. So that's impressive. I mean, whether people think Bisping should have been a champ or was the easy champ, he was the champ at the time. And he came in and he got dismantled. He'd just gone and knocked out Luke Rockhold. So I think GSP is up there.
There is a little bit of weirdness though with that whole thing. I feel like Luke, he got caught slipping, and that was his fault because he took Bisping so lightly. And Bisping's tough, and he hits hard, and and he got caught. Would GSP have ever come back if Luke Rockhold remained the champion? I honestly don't think so.
Yeah.
I think the reason why it took him so long to come back was because no fights made sense for him. It didn't make sense for him to come back at welterweight. Yeah. The only fight that made sense for him, for his legacy, was to come back and become a two-division champ.
Yep.
And he waited until the opponent was Michael Bisping, who, if we go down the line of middleweight champions, was probably the easiest to beat for GSP.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where it's like, is it impressive? It is impressive, but is it, I don't know. I don't know if it's impressive enough to, I don't know. I'm just...
The other ones, where do you put Demetrius Johnson in there?
Yeah, I thought about him too.
He was dominant for a long time.
He was, but the problem with him was that the competition at flyweight, it just was never. It wasn't the same as like the competition that Jon Jones fought. The competition that Anderson Silva fought. The level of talent that those guys fought and outclassed again and again and again was much higher, in my opinion, than what Mighty Mouse saw.
Where do you put Henry Cejudo in the talks for? And this, I think, is one of the more impressive things that he's done. Not only is he a double champ, because we've had, 4 or 5 double champs at this point.
Yeah.
He defended both belts.
Yep.
Has anybody else defended both belts?
Not that I'm aware of, man. Not that I'm aware of.
He defended
I'd have to double check that, but
and the 35. But he kind of, that tail end of his, after he had his 2 losses, he lost to Demetrius and then he lost to Benavidez. And that was kind of controversial.
Oh,
the Benavidez
totally
one.
Thought he won that Benavidez
Yeah, I
fight.
thought he won that as well. But then he was just putting people away. Mm-hmm. So in his run, he knocked out Wilson Hayes, which, whatever. Beat Sergio Pettis and then beat Demetrius. Beat one of the best bantamweights, probably arguably of all time, TJ Dillashaw.
Oh, yeah.
Then he beat one of the biggest up-and-comer, Murderer Row, Marlon Moraes.
Right.
And then he beat Dominic Cruz, who's the other one in the running for bantamweight greatest of all time.
Yep.
Do you think, but he defended both belts once. Do you think that is enough to, I think it puts him above Conor for damn sure.
Yeah.
Conor hasn't defended either.
Yeah.
Do you think that puts
And Conor talks about still active.
Yeah.
Barely.
Yeah, when's the last time he's done anything?
You came back and fought Cowboy.
Yep. When do you think that those accolades from Cejudo can compete with a Jones defending his belt, a GSP defending his belt as many times as he has? Like, what do you think of that?
Yeah, and in my opinion, I think that it's hard to argue with Henry's credentials, right? His resume. The dude has done, and what's crazy about Henry, I was just talking to my dad about this actually too. It's funny, but the thing with Henry is he was beating these guys, but he was putting them away. Like, it was a knee that put Cruz away. It was a punch that put TJ away. You know what I'm saying? That rocked him. He's not just going out there and just out wrestling these dudes like GSP. GSP, man, I used to never look forward to GSP fights because they were so boring to me.
And that's how it was with Demetrius Johnson as well.
Yes.
I actually wouldn't even order. I would order Demetrius Johnson pay-per-views just because I like fights. It's Saturday night. I'm going to order it. But I never cared who won. So I'd always lose money on those cards because I would bet on the cards to make them interesting because I was never interested in the fight itself.
You needed something to get you into it.
I had to get something motivating, and that was it. And it was kind of, so
But again, I think that goes back to the flyweight division is just it wasn't a stacked division. It's still not a stacked division.
Yeah, there's not a lot of guys there.
Yeah, so I think that's part of it. You have Mighty Mouse, who's
bantamweight
phenomenal.
Bantamweight, they have
bantamweight.
I believe they have more bantamweight fighters than any other weight class on the roster.
Oh, really?
The UFC does. I believe
didn't know that.
So. Bantamweight, 35, 45, 55. Those are kind of loaded, on the roster.
Yeah.
But
so anyway, so that's why for me, Mighty Mouse, he was a very incredible talent. Still is. He's fighting over and won. But the competition though, that he beat wasn't the same level as Anderson Silva and Jon Jones.
So who do you have in your top 5?
So top 5, I'd have to say Jon Jones and then Anderson Silva. Because, man, the way Anderson Silva used to put guys away, what he did to Forrest Griffin, his head movement, the way he came in and just completely dismantled Rich Franklin, too, who at the time, Franklin was a stud. And what Anderson Silva did to him twice was incredible. And we can't forget about Aldo in his prime, man. Aldo in his prime, he was he went undefeated for, what was it, like 12 years or something like that?
See, yeah, Aldo was actually, that's a solid one right there.
Yeah, so we can't forget about Aldo. So I have Jon Jones, Anderson Silva, Aldo.
Now, do you put Fedor Emelianenko in there anywhere?
Oh,
because he was Fedor, the most dominant heavyweight of all time.
Shoot, maybe I'll throw him in as number 5. So, and I'm gonna say Jon Jones, Anderson Silva. I have Aldo, GSP, Fedor.
Okay,
that would probably, just right now without thinking more into it, I would probably say that's my top 5.
Okay.
What about you?
Man, the thing that tears me is these guys with the individual titles, Anderson or Jon Jones. They did not win 2, titles in 2 divisions, but they defended a billion times. Aldo, Demetrius, Jon Jones, Anderson, those guys. Then you've got the guys. Then you have the double champs, the Cormiers, Cejudo,
right?
GSP, Conor. And Conor's not in it because he hasn't defended. He hasn't defended in one division or defended either belt. So him, I think he's out of it. So I honestly don't know where I would put. I think I would probably put. No, all right. Accolade. Now, if we take accolades away, and we forget about belts, and we forget about records. If you were to ask me who the best fighter we have ever seen in our lifetimes, without a doubt, I would say Jon Jones times 1,000.
Okay.
Times 1,000. Forget about what he's won. Forget about what everybody else has won. If you said who is the best fighter we've ever seen fight, I would say Jon Jones. Yeah. So I think he's got to be number 1. I think for me,
it's the way he does it, man. He'll submit people. He'll pick people apart on the feet.
He has the accolades, but if you were to say like who is the best fighter we have ever seen, it is him hands down.
Right.
I think behind him, I think it's a tie for me for GSP and Anderson.
Okay.
And then I think I would put Fedor at number 4.
So why do you have GSP and Anderson as a tie? Because GSP won, came back and beat Bisping?
Yes, because he is a double champ and he defended a lot. Now, some of those defenses were pretty close, but so were Jon Jones. Some of those were as well. But when Anderson was doing it, it was a thing of beauty. Like he was knocking people out. But, well, I don't know. No, see, I might... All right, I might have to retract this. Anderson had some amazing fights. He also had some of the single, hands-down worst fights I've ever seen in my life. Against Thales Leites, against Damian Maia, against Patrick Cote. Mm-hmm. Anderson had to have people come at him and swing to be able to win the fights the way that we wanted. So for that reason, I've just talked him down to number 3. I think GSP is maybe even number 4. I think GSP might be number 2.
Okay.
Fedor might be number 3, and the only reason I even say Fedor is number 3, Fedor might be number 1 or 2. We just never got to see him in the UFC.
Yeah.
And so he had a who's who of everybody outside of the UFC, but we never really got to see him fight those guys that we kind of wanted to see him on a regulated basis. So I'd say Jones, GSP, Fedor, and then I would say Cejudo or Anderson Silva. So
for that number 5.
Yes, for that number 5.
Okay.
And then Aldo's an honorable mention. Aldo definitely gets Aldo and Demetrius Johnson get honorable mentions from me. And honestly, I don't know why I'm ranking Aldo so low. He has beat a who's who of everybody in that division and went forever without losing. And honestly, I don't have a reason. People are probably going to skewer me for that. I am so impressed with Aldo. I'm so impressed with his skill set. He's still fighting. He's still good. He is amazing. And for no other reason than I don't freaking know why I'm not putting him higher
But he still makes your top
honorable mentions
list.
But
okay.
I've always, for some reason, underestimated Aldo throughout his career. I've always bet against him, thinking that these other guys were going to win, and I've always lost betting against him.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, and I've always liked watching him fight. I always thought he was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I loved watching him fight.
Great jiu-jitsu, great striking.
It doesn't make sense. I love his style. There's something. Well, I don't know. I couldn't tell you why. I know it's not logical whatsoever, but that's. Aldo, I'm sorry. I've never given you the fucking credit you deserve. You deserve more, man. And so that's kind of how I'd run that out.
No, that's a good list. Yeah, it's hard. See, and when you talk, it's hard to not put Henry on that top 5 list as well because of what he's been able to accomplish. And I'm not even just talking about being the youngest Olympic gold medalist ever.
No, talk about his MMA. Forget about his Olympic gold medal.
Yeah, forget about that, which is incredibly impressive.
Yeah.
But then just even talking about his MMA, what he's been able to do in both divisions, defending both belts. So now I'm thinking like, man, maybe I would take Fedor off of that list, but Fedor was so dominant in his prime.
Fedor was so dominant in his prime.
It's hard. It's hard when you. It's hard. It's a tough
Henry
call,
was, he was on a GOAT conquest. He beat Demetrius Johnson, TJ Dillashaw, Dominic Cruz.
Yeah.
Dude, those are 3 solid...
3 legends in those divisions.
Yes. And he, besides Demetrius, he's finished his last 3 fights, so...
Yeah, it's always fun to talk about. It's always a fun conversation to have, and it's fun.
It's Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who would win? It's all speculation. You can never pin it down. Who's the greatest boxer ever?
Right.
It's like I don't know. There's this. Who's better, Joe Montana or Tom Brady? Tom Brady, motherfuckers. So and it's fun to talk about the woulda, shoulda, coulda speculation. Now. I don't know if you'd call this speculation or not. I don't think it is.
Wait, so moral is though you don't have Conor in your top 5 list?
No.
Playing.
I think Conor's 212 on my. I'm just kidding. I love Conor. Conor's one of my favorite fighters out there. I just don't think we should be talking about GOAT status, at least, pound for pound GOAT status for him.
I respect Conor. I respect what he's done in this sport, but I wouldn't be able to put him on that GOAT list.
No.
At least not yet. Who knows what he does between now and the rest of his career?
But you want to know. People are going to talk about him as being the GOAT. Do you know why?
Because he calls himself the GOAT?
100%. Was Muhammad Ali the greatest? I don't know. But he called himself the greatest, and so people started talking as if he was the greatest.
Right.
Jay-Z, I don't know. I like Jay-Z. He's fine. I do not think he's the greatest rapper of all time, but he calls himself the greatest rapper of all time.
Don't let Brandon hear that.
I know.
Don't let Brandon Olivas hit that.
His head just exploded right now. But when you call yourself the best, Floyd Mayweather wasn't killing the money scene. I mean, he made good money with his first big payday was against Oscar De La Hoya. And then he started calling himself Money May. Money.
Yep.
All of a sudden, he's getting money. He's getting the money. You almost will it into fruition.
Right.
And these people, you talk about yourself as the greatest. Look at these coaches out there. I don't know who the best coach is, but I bet you the ones who are in the running are the ones promoting themselves the most.
Yeah.
The best fighters. We don't know who the best fighter is. We don't know, but we talk about the ones that talk about themselves as the best ever. And those are the guys that we idolize, that we put on a pedestal, because
think about how many people are reading Conor's tweets going, dude's got a point.
Yep.
Dude's got a point. I think he is the GOAT.
And the other people that are fighting and arguing, now you start to create an argument of something that didn't exist.
Yeah,
but you're creating an argument. Would people have ever considered him as the greatest ever? I don't know, but now he created the argument, so now people are talking about it. So now 2 years from now, people are going to be thinking about,
or he comes back again, has some incredible performance, and people go, dude, maybe he is one of the GOATs.
100%. But if you don't say it, maybe they don't.
Right there next to like CM Punk and Sage Northcutt and the real legends of our sports.
Legends. So we talked legend status. We've got this Saturday. We've got another fight. Main event is Tyron Woodley and Gilbert Burns. Let's talk about Tyron Woodley for a second. The dude has been dominant throughout his career. I think he's like 20-4 or something like that. He has not lost a lot of fights. In the UFC, I believe his only losses are to Rory and who beat him, and Usman.
Yes.
I think those are his only 2 losses. But that's another dude that's kind of like a Demetrius Johnson. It's hard to kind of get excited for him as a main event fighter and he's done well. He knocked out Robbie Lawler, and that was exciting. He beat the tar off of Darren Till.
Yep.
Just one of those guys, though, that just doesn't really move the needle for a lot of people. And he is dominant, but he tends to not show up every once in a while. With that Rory Markham fight and that Kamaru Usman fight.
He did
not Rory
lose,
Markham. Rory Markham retired.
Rory
McDonald, yeah, Rory McDonald.
He lost a split decision. This is early on in his career. This is UFC 161 against Jake Shields as well. But that was a long time ago.
Okay.
And it was a split decision.
So you've got Rory, you've got Usman, and in both of those fights, he just didn't look like he wanted to be there at all. He was just showing up, going through the motions. He was going Paulo Filo, looking at the stars up there mid-fight.
We were talking about this, I don't know, a half hour before the podcast, and we were talking about there are certain people that have a switch, right? And you can see when that switch has been flipped, and that switch was not flipped for him in those fights.
No.
But with that said, he's beaten the who's who. If you go through his record,
he's beaten a lot of good people.
He's beaten a lot of good guys, and it's actually because, honestly, man, I'm not the biggest Woodley fan. I don't get excited to watch him fight. Don't enjoy watching him in interviews. There's just nothing about him. There's certain personalities, man, that just don't draw me in.
Well, there's personable, and then there's arrogant without personality. And he seems like he's one of those arrogant guys without. You have Conor McGregor, who's arrogant as they get, but he's personable. He's a character.
Yes, he's funny. He'll make you laugh. Even if you don't like him, he will make you laugh.
Yes, it's one of those things like you get a Cowboy Cerrone who just, he's arrogant, of course. He's cocky, but man, he's just fun to listen to talk, and there's things about him. Whereas Woodley seems arrogant with a chip on his shoulder. He almost seems like he's snobby. Like he's a little too cool for everyone.
Yeah.
And that he's going to talk to the reporters, to the fans, to everyone as if he's just a little too cool.
Yeah, as if he's everyone's parent or something.
Yeah.
And has that level of authority. Yep. And it's like, I don't know, man.
Now he's fighting Gilbert Burns, who's coming off a knockout win of Damian Maia. Was a lightweight and has been, fought his last couple fights up at welterweight.
Yep.
Who's a multiple-time world champion jiu-jitsu guy. And so there are two factors in this fight that I find interesting. One, that Woodley is 38, and that is real. I'm 38. I couldn't fight a cold right now. Like if I get COVID right now, I'm done. I'm 38 years old to me. Like I'm out.
And it's been over a year since he last fought. Woodley, I'm talking about. His last fight was against
not my
Usman.
cold.
Huh?
Hasn't been a year since my cold last fight.
His last fight was March 2nd.
Wow, so
2019.
Pretty much
so we're going over a year since he last fought. Yeah. So who knows how his body's holding up?
Now the other thing, so he's 38 years old, but it doesn't seem like he's had a lot of crazy battles in the
a lot of wars.
Who knows what his training situation is like? But Gilbert Burns. The other thing that's interesting is Gilbert trains with Henry Hooft, who is a training partner of Kamaru Usman.
Right.
Do they know something that we don't? Or is this just a fight where he thinks he can win? Like, you know what? I wonder what that is. What is Henry Hooft? Who's a great coach. He's actually one of my favorite coaches out there right now. I think he's one of the best in the business. And this coming from a guy who's a friggin' coach. I mean, this is
right.
I really do think he's one of the best out there. Usman won, dominated Woodley for 5 rounds. What do they know? That said,
is it what they know, or is it a stylistic thing? Is it that Usman has the style to beat Woodley?
Or is it just balls? Is it like, man, I'm a fighter. Let's go try and fight this guy. And let's throw it out there and see. And if we lose, whatever. We deal with it. Let's go fight this guy.
The reason why I don't think it's that is because I don't know if... I think the other people that Woodley beat had balls, too. But I think that with Usman... stylistically, he just had the style to go out there and out-wrestle Woodley, where Woodley's other opponents could not.
And by out-wrestle, you mean push him on the cage for 25 minutes.
Yeah, in the most exciting fight
I've ever seen. If I could watch any fight again and again and again for the rest of my life, it would be that fight.
Honestly, I'd rather watch Yoel Romero and Izzy. And they did nothing.
That was weird.
Yeah, just because at least it was weird. Where the other fight was just all around boring,
I just give up
man.
MMA. I'm like, I'm done. I'm out.
But so will Burns? So I don't know if there's a secret formula. Will Burns be able to impose his will the way Usman imposed his will on Woodley?
I don't think he will. So I
don't think so either. And I like Burns, man.
Yeah.
I don't think so either. Will he be able to catch Woodley? Maybe he catches Woodley. I don't think Woodley's a slouch on the ground, but he's definitely not he doesn't have the level of jiu-jitsu that Burns has.
No. But Gilbert Burns is a top player. I don't think that he's going to find himself on the top against Tyron Woodley.
Yes, I don't see Woodley being on his back this fight.
And the other thing is, Burns just knocked out Damian Maia, but Damian Maia is not a solid boxer. You know what I mean? He's a jiu-jitsu
not known
guy.
for striking.
Yeah, and he's old too. I think he's 42, 41, 2-3, something like that. So he's getting up there in years. I think Burns is going to be a little bit smaller. Woodley's a solid size, welterweight.
He's a big dude. He's short, but man, the dude is stacked.
I think Burns' boxing is getting better. I think his wrestling is probably getting better. But I initially was actually talking with some of the fighters, and we were talking about who he thinks wins, and I said Burns. And then I went back and I looked at the records, and I was looking at Woodley, and I was watching some fights. I watched the Damian Maia and the Burns fight, and then I watched the Gunnar Nelson Gilbert Burns fight as well. And because of those, I'm going with Woodley. I think Woodley wins. And actually, as soon as I got done watching those fights, I went and bet money on Woodley. Yes. So and I'm killing it lately on the bets. I think I'm 9-2 over the last three fight period.
Very impressive. Okay, I'll just say this real quick. Side note: I was killing it on my picks too. I had a 7-fight parlay.
That's why you don't parlay.
I just threw $1 down.
Oh,
it was just
okay.
more for,
okay, yeah,
more
you
for
do
fun.
that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I put $1 down. $1 would have won me like $35 or something like that,
nice.
right? Every single one of my picks won except for Verdum.
I know. That was a wild one, man.
So I had six of my 7 fights won. And then my one fight, which is actually one of the ones I was more confident in.
Yeah,
I was pretty confident.
I was pretty confident in Verdum winning that.
And he went out there and just put on just such an awful performance. With that said, though,
both of those guys put on retirement performances.
Yeah,
Please don't show up again.
With that said, I actually, and maybe it was just the money because I'm like, come on, I really want you to win this fight, but I actually thought that Verdum won rounds 1 and 2. 2 was close. I thought that he won round 3.
I thought they were going to give it to Verdum. I wouldn't be mad either way. Like, that was fine.
It
either
wasn't
way, I'm
the
not going
worst
to complain.
robbery that I had seen, but I was like, oh, come on, because I just thought that he did enough to win rounds 2 and 3. Anyways, man. So your picks are doing pretty well is what you're saying.
I'm doing pretty well. So I've got some other picks. These are my bet picks for this fight. And I don't always choose, I'll go through. We'll do picks and who we think are going to win and lose, but I don't bet on all of the fights. The fights that I put money on this one were Billy Quarantillo and Casey Kenny. And in addition to Tyron Woodley. And I'll put those 3. I put money on those 3, and then I just put. I say don't parlay, but I always do parlay. So I'll get my picks, and then I do just a $5 parlay just at the end. And usually, the parlays. But the thing with the parlays is don't do the 7-mans. Do the 3. Split them up into 3 or 4 mans.
Okay.
Because you just have such a better shot of winning. It's so hard to get. You won 6 of them, and that one person killed you. Shit.
Totally. It was just one of those I just did it for fun.
Yep.
And I was really confident in my picks, which. Looking back now, I'm glad I was because they did a good job, except for Verdum, who I did still thought won the fight at the time. Anyways, man. So who do you got? So you said you're putting money on Casey Kenny.
Putting money on Casey Kenny.
Putting money on my boy Billy Q, who I fought. I lost him on the Contender Series, but I wish that dude the best because I don't want to lose to somebody who loses.
No, you never want to lose. You always want the guys that you fight, whether you won or lost to them, to win.
100%. And, I was the same way in jiu-jitsu. If I had lost a match in jiu-jitsu, I always wanted whoever I lost to win the whole thing because you don't want to lose to a loser.
Yeah.
So Billy Q put on a hell of a performance in his last fight, so I'm hoping he does the same again this weekend.
And then I have Tyron.
And you have, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So I've got those 3, I think all of them are favorites.
Do you have them in a parlay or are these separate bets?
They are separate bets and a parlay. So like I said, I put money on each of them, and then a small parlay. I think $10 on a parlay. Yeah, I put Let's see, $5 on a parlay. Yep. No, okay. I'm sorry, $10 on a parlay.
Which will get you what?
Let me see. I'm looking right now. Not a lot. They're all favorites.
It's hard. Yeah, when they're all favorites, it's like you put down
$23.
Oh, 20. Okay.
So 23 plus my 10 back. So I end up with my $10 back and $23. But the thing is, we always, and this for any of you bettors out there, don't bet the odds because that's how you lose. You always lose when you go, oh, so-and-so's a good bet at plus 250.
Yes.
Oh, so-and-so at this, or oh, this is don't bet the odds. So what I do First thing I do is I look at the fight, and then I go through and I look at their records. Go to Tapology. You have Tapology, Sherdog, and Mixed Martial Arts. Those are kind of the big record holders right now. Tapology, to me, tends to be the easiest to navigate when I'm toggling back and forth between them. Okay. So I use Tapology, but you could use any. So I look at their records, both of them, in their last 5-6 fights, kind of compare opponents, see how they've won, all of that. Then what I do is I go back and watch their last few fights. And that's the big thing. So I look at the record, but then I watch their fights and I kind of compare how they move, what they do, weaknesses versus the other guy's strengths. And then I go back and I pick a winner. Before I ever look at the odds, I pick a winner who I think is going to win, and kind of I think, and I'll kind of do my own odds, fighter A and fighter B. I'll say, I think A wins this. It'll probably be close. Or, I think fighter A kills so-and-so. Then what I do is I look at the odds. And a lot of times my assumption on the fights matches the odds. I'm like, fighter A is going to, we'll say Tyron Woodley is going to kill Gilbert Burns, right? If I just think that off the top of my head, and then I go and Tyron's a -600 and Gilbert's a +400, I probably won't bet money on Tyron Woodley or Gilbert Burns. I thought Gilbert Burns was going to lose regardless of the odds. And then, I thought Tyron was going to win regardless of the odds. I wouldn't do it. But two things happen. If I think somebody's going to win and especially if I'm like, so-and-so is going to kill this person and they're -110, -115, a slight favorite, then I'll put money on that person. Yeah. And then of course, if I think somebody is going to win slightly or hugely and they end up being a big dog,
you'll throw a lot of money on that person?
Not a lot, because again, I hedge my bets. I don't go crazy. I just bet, again, the same thing that I would bet on other people, but you just end up winning a lot of And
that's I see. Okay.
That's kind of how I go through it. And I do, instead of just trying to make all my money off of one fight, I kind of like the stock market. I diversify. And so I'll put 2 or 3, I'll spend $50, $100 a fight card. I'll put $20 on this person, $20 on that person, $30 on this person, whatever. I kind of do it in a $5 parlay at the end. Yeah. And over the course of weeks and months, I start to grow. I build little by little by little. Instead of, see, the thing is, if you do that, chances are you're going to hedge and you're going to end up having an upward trend over the course of a month or so. You put a lot of money on somebody and they lose, boom, now all of a sudden you dropped all your money in a row. So you hedge your bets and you go. But anyway, that's my kind of process on
So do you but when you have somebody that you are so confident in and they're an underdog, do you ever throw more? Are there ever fights where you throw more than you normally would on an average fight, or no?
Yeah, but I don't go stupid on it. I won't go and put $1,000 down. I might up it to $50 or something like that. And there's so many fight cards now as well that, again, most of my bets I don't keep. I do it mainly for fun, but honestly, I would put more money down because I do a really, really, really good job of picking bets when I put the time to watching video. That's the thing is. Yep. A lot of the time, so I say, I go to the record and then I watch the fights and then I do all this stuff. But a lot of times I'll look at the record and then I'll maybe I watch a little bit of tape or I kind of remember I saw him soon and then I'll put the bet. When I watch the fights, I'm at probably 80%, 90% winning rate when I go through the whole series. When I don't go through it all and I just don't want to spend the time on it, I'm at, I would say, 60 to 75% winning rate. Okay. And I'm still winning and gaining, but a lot of it matters. And see, this is the thing is, you could win 5 bets, all right? Or no, you could win 4 bets and lose 1 bet and come out in the negative. It's all how you bet the money. So if I bet, and what people tend to do is they tend to bet little money on winner, on favorite, little money on favorite. They see a dog, they bet all their money, they lose on the dog. So if you were to bet, say there's 10, or
Should it be the complete opposite of that?
Yes, you bet the big money on the favorite because chances are that's where you get your money.
They're the favorite for a reason.
Yes, but everybody wants a life-changing paycheck instead of, this is what they want. Everybody wants overnight success instead of putting money in savings and gaining little by little by little by little. Yeah. Same thing in the stock market. I'm active in the stock market. I don't go and say, oh, this is a penny stock. If it goes up, I'm rich. And then it goes down and you lose all your money. I pick a good stock at a fair price and I let it inch up, inch up, inch up, inch up. The same thing I do with the stocks. If there's 5 bets, if you put $10 on each of those bets, that's $50 right there. All right. So we'll say 4 of those are favorites. One of them is a dog. But what happens? People put $10 on those 4, their favorites, and then $50 on the dog,
and they hope that the dog
hits. And they win 4 freaking matchups, and they end up losing money because they end up netting
such a fat
zero.
chunk on the dog. Yeah.
But if you were to do 5 fights and then put $10 on each of them, chances are those 4 favorites, even if you lose on the dog, you're still going to net positive because you have all of those winnings. And that's the thing is, everybody, I'm a little more calculated. I don't bet just to bet. Like, you know, like I bet because I want to see it. I like to see it and trend, and it's something that interests me. I don't want to just do it to do it. But again, people need to be just a little bit more
intelligent with how they do it and how they go about it.
Yes. Don't look for the big one. Look for an incremental gain over the same thing. Again, same thing with your retirement account, your savings account. Don't look to win the lotto. Look to put $10 away a week over the course of X amount of time, and now you have money 40 years from now versus I'm going to hit it big. I'm going to hit it big. Because you never freaking hit it big.
Yeah. Now you post your pics on your social media too, right? Like on your Instagram.
Yes, I've been posting them on my Instagram account, which I think it's just Santino DeFranco. At Santino DeFranco is my IG. I don't even know. It might be Santino_DeFranco, but I think it's just Santino DeFranco.
Yeah, just Santino DeFranco.
Yeah, and I've been doing well. Actually, I think I was telling somebody. It was when I was in Jacksonville. I had people who sell fight pics and who are like bookie type, these are my picks, follow me, DMing me, asking me for my picks so they can post on their stuff.
Really?
Yes. And
you got to start charging those dudes.
I know. I need to start only them though. Yeah. I don't charge anybody else, just the people trying to make money off of it. And I don't charge for my picks. I just throw them up there and stuff. Maybe eventually if I'm really like killing it and stuff. But right now I don't. Honestly, it's my own arrogance thing is like, hey,
I told you.
I'm choosing picks right now. I'm just an arrogant asshole. So nothing changes in that with anything else. Anything else going on in the news that we're chatting about? Or I think that's pretty much it right now.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much. I think the last time we had talked, I don't think things had opened up yet.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So now, I mean, we're in Arizona, so things are opening up again. And I went to Olive Garden, had some food.
Nice.
Which I don't care what anybody says. Olive Garden is Italian food.
No, listen.
Italian food.
No. It is 100% not Italian food. It is 100% delicious.
100%. I agree with half of that statement.
It is, I equate Olive Garden to Taco Bell. It is.
People, I think that Taco Bell is Mexican food.
See, I don't think it's Mexican food. It's not authentic Mexican food.
I will agree with that. I will say it's not the highest quality Mexican food,
but it's delicious.
But it's Mexican food.
It's delicious. And yeah, I mean, Olive Garden is quote unquote Italian. It's not fine Italian food.
And people are like, hey, what about Pan Express? Is Pan Express Chinese? Yeah, it is Chinese.
It's delicious for what it is.
Right.
Now, same thing with pizza. Like, I'm a pizza snob. I want fine artisan freaking grill, baked at 2 billion degrees, coming out in 7 seconds. That's the type of pizza I want, but don't get it twisted. I will go to Costco and eat the shit out of some pizza.
Costco's got some awesome pizza.
No, but it does. It's good for what it does.
Yeah.
It's like McDonald's isn't a freaking hamburger. I mean, it is, but it's not a good grilled hamburger.
That's
man,
always,
that shit does what it does.
Yeah, man. That's always my argument. People always, they want to hate.
Yep.
And I'm like, why can't we just say that there are levels? And for fast food Mexican, you can go to Taco Bell.
Yeah. But
you're getting tacos and burritos. Last time I checked, that's Mexican.
Olive Garden, man, that.
You got noodles and lasagna.
I freaking love Olive Garden.
Dude, it's the best. So
it's our hidden, I mean, like my wife and I it's our guilty pleasure.
Yeah. That was the first place that we went. So restaurants started opening up. We went to Olive Garden. It was weird, man, because obviously social distancing, all that kind of stuff. So there are gaps of tables. So you'll be eating at one table, there's a gap, and then the next, family or whoever will be eating at the next table. But the weirdest part was all of the workers were wearing masks, including our server, and our server was kind of quiet. And behind the mask, you can barely hear.
It's all mumbles.
Yeah, it's all mumbles. You can barely hear what he's saying. And then normally, I think we just do this without even thinking about it, but when we have a hard time hearing somebody, we will just naturally look at their lips to try to see if we can make out what they're saying. And you can't even do that because...
Do you start looking at their crotch?
Yeah. So
creeper.
So instead I started looking at, where the sun don't shine. But no, so I'm like, man, you can't read his lips. You couldn't hear what he was saying. The whole thing, and the only facial expressions you see are just in the eyes. So sometimes if he smiles or smirks or something, you could see like a little squint in his eyes.
Otherwise, you're like, are you glaring at me?
Dude,
are you gonna stab me?
You feel like you're ordering food from a robot. Like there's an android who's like, let me take your order. And there's no real, it wasn't very personable.
Well, no, it's weirding me out.
It's kind of bizarre.
I'm getting mad at this. This grinds my gears. So I don't know if COVID is a thing that we have to worry about. We talked about this a little bit before. Like my personal take on it is I'm not worried about it. I understand that other people are. Like, first of all, there's no fucking constitutional right to not wear a mask at all. Like this is not a constitutional matter, people. If you're annoyed, whatever, but we can't call it constitution. We've been hearing a lot. Hear the no shirt, no shoes, no service thing. Like you can't walk into Costco without pants. Like they can, you know what I mean? They can make you wear whatever they want as you go in there. They're a private property.
They're a private business. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. It's private. It's not government. But even government, you're stamping on my rights. We tell you not to go 5 miles over the speed limit, or we give you a ticket. We can tell you to wear a face mask. So again, that's kind of separate. But so I get it. Going into stores, I'm not. If they were like, hey, you have to wear a face mask, I'm fine with that. If not, I'm okay with going in a store without a face mask and just being vigilant. Not getting too close to people, carrying hand sanitizer with. I am being my own guide on this, all right? I don't need other people, but if they tell me, whatever, I'm good with it. I'm not worried about it.
Cooperate.
Yep, I'm cooperating. I'm not too worried. I don't want to bring it home to my kids. I'm not going to go like hug people in public like that I don't know, just stuff like that. But the issue that gets me, that's really annoying me, is people wearing gloves.
Yeah.
The plastic rubber type of gloves, because if you're not wearing gloves, and you say you're a cashier, all right? So if you're a cashier and you take my credit card or hand me a receipt or whatever, you do stuff, you can hand sanitize in between every person coming in.
Right.
The second you put on those fucking gloves, people, now whatever you grabbed from the person before me, you just transferred to me.
Yes.
I don't want whatever that person has. They have fucking coronavirus.
Right.
I don't want their coronavirus. I want you to put your or we have a solution. You wear gloves. You do whatever you do with them, take those gloves off, and give me a fresh-ass new pair of gloves. When you go to surgery, all right, Dr. Kirk over there, you don't go in, cut somebody up, get all bloody with their germs,
and then go on to the next patient.
And just wipe your hands off and go to the next patient with the same gloves.
Not to mention how many of these people that you see wearing gloves, they go and then they touch their face.
Oh.
You see them and then, all the time. It's like, man, that's defeating the purpose.
That's it. That's the one thing that's bothering me about all of this. Anything else I can I deal with, but I'm a little quirky and not quirky. I just, things weird me out anyway. I'm not OCD about germs, but I'm a little annoyed with everyone on the planet, and I pick up on other people's tics, and that's the one that, out of all the things that are happening, and close talkers. There's been some close talkers during this. I'm like, dude, 6 feet bubble, dude.
Hey, coronavirus or not, back up.
Yeah, back up.
You're
Coronavirus
a little close.
or not.
We should be touching noses.
Other than that, stuff's getting back to normal. Salt River. Here in Arizona, it's a big destination. People go tubing down the Salt River. Made the national news today or yesterday. I forget what day it is. It was busier than any Vegas pool I've ever seen in my life. And this is going on for as far as you could see. And cameras can kind of skew things. You get a telephoto lens. You take a picture. It looks like everything is really tight together.
Yeah.
So I again, even seeing a camera, I don't buy it 100%. But there is a lot of people out there. That's for damn sure. Yeah. So people are coming back. I'm curious to see if the curve flattens or if we spike again.
Yeah, I think it's different in every state, man. I mean, Arizona's going to react differently, obviously, than New York has reacted to this. And part of that is because we're so spaced out.
Yep.
We're also a hot state, too. And supposedly, I mean, the news is changing all the time, but supposedly this virus doesn't do well in the heat. So I think between being so spread out and we're in the middle of summer now, I think Arizona's going to be fine.
Yeah.
I am curious though, like to see what the numbers look like in fall and winter.
Yeah.
The
thing that gets me, and this is what I'm being annoyed with, because we've been hearing a lot of stuff, and a lot of this stuff is conspiracy. You don't know. Honestly, it's sad that we say we don't know what information is true and false at this point, but you really don't know. You're seeing a lot of reports. People are complaining, and I've heard this. I couldn't tell you just while I was in Jacksonville how many people told me this similar scenario. is we know that, I know somebody that works in the hospital, or there's this or there's that, and somebody came in, had a heart attack, died, they tested him for COVID, and then they chalk it up as a COVID death. I don't know the truth to that. It's weird either way.
I've heard the same thing. I've heard that somebody who, if someone's on a motorcycle and they get hit by a car and they die, but they had COVID-19, that they're chalking that up to a COVID-19 death as well.
I don't know if it's true or not.
I don't know either.
What I do know that I'm not seeing is that, so we're seeing new cases of COVID, right? Like you see, all right, 1,000 new cases today, 1,000 new cases this week, 1,000. I don't know why that matters whatsoever. I don't know why we're tracking or reporting new cases. What I want to know is how many deaths of those.
How many of the people have recovered from the cases?
Yes.
From the
so
people who've
what
had
I
them?
want to know is I want a total number. Say there's 1,000 people that were reported this week, but then I also want to know how many of those were hospitalized, how many of those were asymptomatic, how many of those died, because that's what really matters. There's a lot of people that are getting COVID. And we get the flu, we get colds, we get stuff all the time. But how many people are dying from the flu? That's the issue that we need to know, because then we know, okay, is this really as dangerous as we think? Because right now, I mean, like we were talking about Jacare and his cornerman, they all tested positive for COVID. All of them were asymptomatic.
Right.
So now it matters that they can spread it to other people, but there's a big difference between something that is spreadable and something that is killing people.
Yeah.
And that's what I really want to know throughout all of this. And hopefully we'll start to get some better numbers on that. But man,
like a way more accurate mortality rate.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, we'll see. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm happy to be living in a state that's reopening again.
Yes, 100%.
I feel bad. I mean, there's still so much of the country that is still shut down. And and it almost borderline feels like we are kind of back to normal. You know what I mean? Like, at least here. But then you talk to someone who's living in California and they're still on full-on lockdown, cannot leave the house if they're not wearing a face mask. All beaches closed down still. You know, things like that where you're like, man, this is still a big thing in many other parts of the country.
It's a big thing. That's crazy. And we still, globally, I don't know that there's an end in sight. It really is a thing. And you're starting to see, I need to go back and look. Sweden did not lock down, and they had a lot of cases spike and a lot of deaths. But you almost wonder if 100 people are going to get, say 1 million people are going to die in America this year from COVID. I'm just throwing that number out there. If they're going to die slowly throughout the course of 12 months because we don't quarantine, or if they're all going to die in 1 month because we get it all at once and then everybody that herd immunity, I don't know if you could prevent 1 million people dying if we did it the other way or not.
Or if it's just a matter of time.
Yes, I really don't. And I'm not trying to be callous, and because again, I do think it's real. I don't think it's a hoax. I don't think it's, I think it's something that we have to consider. But I also think that there's a big level of self-awareness and in our choice as to, like, do we put ourselves into those situations?
Right.
And again,
what kind of hit are we willing to take as a country in order to, and how many lives are we really saving, or are we just prolonging this and then putting ourselves in a position that's going to take us a long time to recover from?
What happens if our cases never go back down and COVID's with us forever?
Right.
Like, okay, now we wasted a year. And it's not like people are really going on full lockdown. It was like quasi lockdown. Essential services and restaurants are open and things like that. So it's like,
you're saying in the beginning that's how it was?
Just kind of always, even when Arizona was quote unquote locked down, people were out, restaurants were open, people are doing stuff.
For takeout, exactly.
We talked about this, the analogy. It's like wearing a condom and poking a hole in it. It's like,
we're using protection.
Yeah, it's protective, and you're going to prevent a lot of that sperm getting out and impregnating somebody. But remember, it only takes one.
Yeah.
And so, do you reduce the risk of it? 100%. But it's still a little bit of a risk. Like, we're not, who are we fooling over here?
Right.
So basically that's what we've done with America is we put a big giant condom on it and poked a bunch of holes. And now we're just seeing how much COVID comes flying in to impregnate us all.
That's crazy. But yeah, I mean, you're right, man. You're right. The thing is, it went from, like, in the beginning, it went from flattening the curve to now, like, there's like an indefinite lockdown.
Yeah, no flat. Like,
so that's the thing where it's like, are we here forever? Well, certain states, are we going to be doing this for forever? Yeah. Or are we just doing this because we're trying to flatten the curve? Or is everybody going to get this thing eventually and we develop a herd immunity? You know, so it's like there's just so much uncertainty and everything's changing, and you hear one person suggest this, but then he's an idiot, and then you hear this person suggest that, and then they're an idiot.
You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get. I had my buddy John Rosenberg. He was here for a podcast, remember? And then there was a gas leak, so he couldn't do it.
That's right.
He's the neurologist that was going to talk about CTE with me and brain damage, all of that stuff. But in addition to being a neurologist, he was in a Manhattan. He's an attending physician, head attending physician, neurologist, and then they're kind of all. Neurology doesn't exist in time of COVID. Nothing does. Everybody's on COVID. But he was running an ICU unit at a major Manhattan hospital right in the middle of all of this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I would like to...
I'm sure he's got some stories.
Yeah, he told me a lot of information about stuff about COVID, about how the issues with it, that it wasn't really COVID, that it was the life cycle of it, and then it's really interesting stuff. I'm going to see if I can get him on here. We talked about doing some Zoom stuff.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can get John on, actually, for the next podcast. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so, I'm curious to see what he has to say about it.
Well, on that note, let's get out of here. It's been fun. You guys hang out. Remember to like and subscribe. Do it, or we will hunt you down and kill you. So like, subscribe on YouTube if we end up throwing this up on YouTube, and of course on Spotify, on iTunes, all of that stuff. But recommend us too, because I don't know, we're kind of the coolest podcasters out there right now. I can't think of anyone better.
The coolest podcast that nobody knows about.
Yeah. We didn't just sign a Spotify $100 million deal like Joe Rogan did, but we're close. I mean, at some point we'll get like $8.
Hey, we're the self-proclaimed GOAT, pound for pound GOAT of podcasts.
See, that's it. We're the best podcasters ever. Are we
number one in the world?
Are we the best podcaster, or is Joe Rogan the best podcaster ever?
We are the best podcasters ever. Because you can't put a price on our show.
See exactly. Now people will start talking about it. Oh yes, they are the best podcasters. No, they're not. Probably a lot more no's than yeses. Our family will say yes because they have to.
I'll say yes. You'll say yes.
And now the dialogue starts. And now in a year from now, people are going to go, hey, was Santino's world with Kamuela?
And a year from now, people are going to be like, Santino's what?
Yeah.
What podcast?
So, well, all right, you guys, we will see you next time, and tune in, be safe, and don't poke holes in your condoms.